The alarm on Horizon Point Research Station cut through the quiet night shift like a knife. Jake Morrison sat up straight in his security office, his coffee forgotten as red lights began flashing across his console. Something was approaching the station, and it wasn't supposed to be there. Jake had been chief security officer for 3 years now, and he knew every ship that was scheduled to dock with their small orbital platform. This wasn't one of them. His fingers moved quickly across the controls, pulling up sensor data. The vessel was small, maybe the size of a shuttle. Its hull was damaged, scarred with what looked like weapon burns, and it was limping toward them like a wounded animal. He reached for his radio. "Commander Bennett, we have an unauthorized approach. Small craft heavily damaged, requesting emergency docking." Lisa Bennett's voice came back immediately, alert despite the late hour. "Can you identify it?" "Negative. It's not human design. Scanning for life signs now." Jake's heart beat faster as the data came through. "One occupant alive but weak. The ship is falling apart. If we don't let them dock, they'll die out there." There was a pause. Jake knew what Lisa was thinking. Protocol said they should contact Earth Command first. Get authorization before allowing any unknown vessel to dock with a human station. But that would take hours, maybe days. The person in that ship didn't have that kind of time. "Do it," Lisa said finally. "Get them into docking bay 3. "I'm on my way." And Jake, suit up. "We don't know what we're dealing with." Jake was already moving. He grabbed his gear and headed for the docking bay, his boots ringing on the metal floors of the corridor. Horizon Point wasn't a military installation, just a research station studying the moons of this distant system. They had 12 people on board, scientists mostly, with Jake handling security. They weren't prepared for first contact with an unknown alien species. By the time he reached the bay, the damaged ship was already inside. Through the window, Jake could see it was unlike anything he'd ever seen. The hull had a strange organic quality to it, smooth curves instead of hard angles. Symbols were carved into its surface, glowing faintly with blue light. And yes, there were definitely weapon marks across the sides. Lisa arrived with Dr. Henry Walsh, their medical officer. Sophie Cruz, their engineer, came running down the corridor moments later, still pulling on her jacket. They all stood behind the safety barrier, watching as the ship's hatch slowly opened. What emerged made Jake's breath catch in his throat. She was humanoid, but clearly not human. Her skin had a faint purple tint, and her eyes were larger than human eyes, a deep amber color that seemed to glow in the dim light of the bay. She was tall, maybe 6 feet, with long limbs and graceful movements. Her clothing was torn and stained with something that might have been blood, though it was silver instead of red. She took 2 steps forward and collapsed. Henry was through the airlock in seconds, his medical training overriding his caution. Jake followed close behind, his hand on his sidearm but not drawing it. Up close, he could see she was breathing, but barely. There was a wound on her side, and her skin was pale beneath the purple tint. "Get her to medical," Henry said. "Now." They carried her carefully through the station, drawing stares from the handful of crew members who were awake. In the medical bay, Henry went to work immediately, scanning her with equipment that had never been designed for alien biology. Jake stood back, watching as the doctor muttered to himself, trying to make sense of readings that didn't match anything in his database. "Her biology is similar enough to ours that I think I can help her," Henry said, after several tense minutes. "But I'm flying blind here. This is going to be experimental. Do what you can," Lisa said quietly. For the next 2 hours, Henry worked. He cleaned the wound, administered drugs that seemed to stabilize her condition, and hooked her up to monitoring equipment. Slowly, her breathing became stronger. The color began to return to her skin. Jake sat in the corner, unable to look away. He'd seen aliens before, in photos and videos from Earth's first explorations beyond the solar system, but those had been brief encounters observed from a distance. This was different. This was a person injured and vulnerable, lying on a bed in their medical bay. When she finally opened her eyes, everyone in the room held their breath. Her gaze moved slowly around the space, taking in the unfamiliar surroundings. When her eyes landed on Jake, she flinched, trying to sit up. Henry moved forward with his hands raised in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "It's okay," he said softly. "You're safe. We're not going to hurt you." She stared at them for a long moment, then reached slowly for something on her belt. Jake's hand moved to his weapon, but she pulled out a small device no bigger than a coin. She pressed it, and suddenly words filled the air, projected in light above the device. "Translation matrix active. Please speak. You're on Horizon Point Research Station, Lisa said carefully. A human outpost. Your ship was damaged. We brought you here to help you. The woman listened as the device translated Lisa's words into sounds that Jake couldn't begin to understand. Then she spoke, her voice melodic but filled with exhaustion. The device translated her words into English. I am Vela. Therian species, Thank you. I did not expect mercy. Her eyes filled with tears that shimmered silver in the light. The Dominion. They found my ship. I barely escaped. The Dominion? Lisa asked. An empire. They conquer, they destroy. My people. We were traders, peaceful, but we knew the old routes through space. Paths that no one else remembered. The Dominion wanted that knowledge. When we refused to give it, Her voice broke. They killed my family. Destroyed our homeworld. I am all that remains of my settlement. The room fell silent. Jake felt something tighten in his chest. He'd seen enough war footage from Earth's own history to recognize the look in her eyes. This was someone who had lost everything. The data, Vela continued. I carry data about the routes. If the Dominion finds me, they will take it. They will use it to attack other worlds. I must reach the free systems. Warn them. How badly damaged is your ship? Sophie asked. Vela looked at her with those strange, beautiful eyes. Very damaged. I do not think it will fly again. Sophie and Lisa exchanged glances. Jake knew what they were thinking. If they couldn't fix her ship, they'd have to call Earth Command. That would mean bureaucracy, delays, investigations. And if this Dominion was really hunting Vela, those delays could be fatal. Let me look at it, Sophie said. Maybe I can fix it. Over the next 3 days, the small crew of Horizon Point worked around the clock. Sophie practically lived in the docking bay, studying Vela's ship with the fascination of someone seeing technology far beyond anything humans had developed. The ship's systems were damaged but not beyond repair. With some creative improvisation and parts from their own supplies, Sophie thought she could get it flying again. Henry continued to monitor Vela's recovery. To his amazement, she responded well to several human medicines. Her biology was different, yes, but not so different that basic treatments didn't work. Within a day, she was able to walk around the medical bay. Within 2 days, she insisted on helping Sophie with the repairs. Jake found himself drawn to the docking bay during his off hours. He told himself he was just maintaining security, but the truth was simpler than that. He was curious. Vela was intelligent, kind, and despite everything she'd been through, she still found wonder in the smallest things. She marveled at human music when Greg Palmer played some songs in the common area. She asked endless questions about Earth, about human culture, about why they'd chosen to help her. Why did you let me dock? She asked Jake one evening. They were sitting in the observation lounge, looking out at the stars. You did not know me. I could have been dangerous, Jake thought about it for a moment. You were dying, he said simply. What else were we supposed to do? Most species would have let me die, Vela said quietly. Or they would have saved me and demanded payment. Your people. You asked for nothing. That's just how humans are, Jake said. At least how we try to be. We don't always get it right, but when someone needs help, we help. It's that simple. Vela turned to look at him, and Jake saw something in her eyes that made his heart skip. Respect, maybe. Or gratitude so deep it had no name. On the 3rd day, Sophie declared the ship ready to fly. It wasn't pretty, and it wouldn't survive another fight, but it would get Vela to the free systems. They loaded her ship with extra supplies, food that Henry had determined was safe for her biology, and medical equipment in case her wounds reopened during flight. Jake walked her to the docking bay for the last time. Lisa had filed a report with Earth Command that carefully omitted certain details. As far as official records were concerned, they'd provided humanitarian aid to a refugee and sent her on her way. The bureaucrats could argue about protocol later. At the airlock, Vela turned to face Jake. She reached up and pressed her forehead against his, a gesture that felt intimate and formal at the same time. I will not forget this, she said. My people have a saying. A life saved creates a debt that spans the stars. I owe you my life, Jake Morrison. All of you. You don't owe us anything, Jake said. Just stay safe out there, okay? I will try. She smiled, and for a moment the sadness in her eyes lifted. Life on Horizon Point returned to its normal rhythm, but nothing felt quite the same. Jake went through his daily routines, checking security systems, running diagnostics, monitoring the sensor arrays. but his mind kept wandering back to those 3 days when they'd harbored an alien refugee. He found himself checking the long-range sensors more often than necessary, looking for ships that might be following Vela's trail. Lisa noticed. Everyone noticed. The commander didn't say much about it, but she'd catch Jake staring out the observation windows during his breaks, his coffee growing cold in his hands. She understood. They'd all felt it. That strange connection that came from helping someone in desperate need. It changed a person. The official response from Earth Command came 5 days after Vela's departure. It was remarkably mild, all things considered. A formal reprimand for not following first contact protocols, balanced with a commendation for humanitarian action. The bureaucrats were still figuring out how to handle these situations. Humanity was new to the galactic stage, still learning the rules of a game they barely understood. "They're scared," Lisa told Jake over lunch in the small cafeteria. "Every interaction we have with alien species could go wrong, start a war, create enemies we can't handle. So they write these protocols that sound good on paper, but don't mean much when you're actually facing a real situation." "You think we did the right thing?" Jake asked. "I know we did." Lisa took a sip of her coffee. "The question is whether Earth will see it that way when it matters." Greg Palmer joined them at the table, his tablet in hand. The communications officer looked troubled. "We're picking up some weird chatter on the deep space channels," he said. "Encrypted transmissions, lots of them. Military-grade encryption, nothing we can break. But the pattern matches what we detected when Vela's ship first showed up." "The Dominion?" Jake felt his stomach tighten. Maybe. Or maybe just regular traffic. Space is busy these days. Greg shrugged, but his eyes were worried. "Thing is, the transmissions are getting closer. Whatever ships are sending them, they're moving into this sector." Lisa set down her cup. "How much closer?" "Right now, they're about a week away at standard cruising speed. Could be nothing. Could be a trade convoy. But Jake, if they're following her trail..." He didn't need to finish the sentence. "If the Dominion was tracking Vela, and if they found evidence that she'd been here, Horizon Point could be in serious trouble." They were a research station, not a military base. Their defenses were designed to handle space debris and small asteroids, not warships. That afternoon, Jake called a meeting with Sophie and Henry. They gathered in the small conference room, away from the rest of the crew. No need to spread panic if there was nothing to panic about. "I want to upgrade our defenses," Jake said without preamble. "Everything we can do with what we have. Stronger shields, better weapons targeting, emergency protocols. I want us ready for the worst." "You really think they'll come here?" Sophie asked. "I think we don't know enough to assume anything. Better to be prepared and wrong than unprepared and dead." Henry leaned back in his chair. "I've been thinking about Vela's biology, the scans I took, the medical data. If the Dominion does show up and ask questions, should we delete that information? Hide the evidence that she was here?" "No," Jake said firmly. "If they're the kind of people who hunt down refugees and destroy entire civilizations, lying to them won't help. They'll know she was here. Our sensor logs will show her ship docking. The question is what we tell them about where she went." "The truth?" Sophie suggested. "The truth is we fixed her ship and sent her toward the free systems. But we don't know her exact course. She could have gone anywhere after she left sensor range." Jake looked at each of them. "That's not a lie, that's just incomplete information." They worked through the afternoon and into the evening, running simulations and drills. Jake pushed the crew harder than he ever had before, and to their credit, they rose to the challenge. Even the scientists who'd never trained for combat situations paid attention during the emergency procedures briefings. On the 7th day after Vela's departure, Jake was in his quarters trying to sleep when the alarm sounded again. He was on, his feet and running before his brain fully processed what was happening. His fingers flew across his personal tablet as he sprinted down the corridor, pulling up sensor data. 3 ships. No, 4. Large vessels, heavily armed, moving in formation. They were still outside weapons range, but they were heading straight for Horizon Point, and they weren't slowing down. Lisa was already in the command center when Jake arrived. "Talk to me," she said. "Unknown vessels, military configuration. They're not broadcasting any identification signals. Weapons are powered up but not targeted at us." Jake's hands moved across the controls, bringing up everything they had. "Estimated arrival in 20 minutes. Options? We can't outrun them. We can't fight them. We can try to talk to them." Jake looked at his commander. "Or we can run silent. Power down everything non-essential and hope they pass us by." Lisa shook her head. "They know we're here. Running silent just makes us look guilty. Greg, open a channel. Let's see who they are." The wait for a response felt like hours. When the channel finally opened, the face that appeared on the screen made Jake's blood run cold. The alien was reptilian, with green scales and yellow eyes that had no warmth in them. When it spoke, the universal translator built into their system rendered the words in flat, emotionless English. "Human vessel. This is Commander Zrath of the Dominion Fleet. We are tracking a fugitive, a Therian criminal named Vela. Our sensors indicate her ship docked with your station 8 days ago. You will provide all information regarding her location immediately." Lisa kept her voice steady. "This is Commander Lisa Bennett of Horizon Point Research Station. Yes, a Therian individual requested emergency assistance 8 days ago. We provided humanitarian aid as required by our laws. She departed after her ship was repaired. We do not know her current location. You will transmit all sensor logs and medical data. We'll be happy to cooperate," Lisa said. "But I should inform you that this is a civilian research station operating under Earth authority. Any aggressive action against us would be considered an act of war against humanity." It was a bluff, and everyone in the command center knew it. Earth's fleet was still small, still growing. In a fight with the Dominion, humanity would lose badly. But maybe they didn't know that. Maybe the threat would be enough. Zrath's eyes narrowed. "We have no interest in conflict with your species. We simply want the fugitive. She stole classified information. She is a criminal." "She said she was a refugee." Jake spoke up before he could stop himself. "She said the Dominion destroyed her home." "You know nothing of what you speak, human." Zrath's voice carried a hint of anger now. "The Therian refused to share vital security information. They chose to harbor threats to Dominion stability. The consequences were their own doing." Jake felt rage building in his chest, but Lisa shot him a warning look. She turned back to the screen. "Regardless of your internal politics, we followed our own laws. We helped an injured person and sent her on her way. We have no further information to provide. Your sensor logs will show her departure vector." "They will," Lisa agreed. "But as you know, ships can change course once they're away from a station. She could be anywhere in this sector by now." The standoff lasted for several minutes. Zrath stared at them through the screen, his alien face unreadable. Finally, he spoke again. "Transmit your logs. We will review them. Do not attempt to hide information. The Dominion has ways of knowing when humans lie." They sent the logs. Unedited, complete, exactly what had happened. There was no point in lying. The data showed Vela's ship docking, showed their repair work, showed her departure heading generally toward the free systems. After that, the trail went cold. The Dominion ships held position for 3 hours, presumably reviewing the data. During that time, Jake kept the entire station on high alert. Every crew member was at their station. Every system was ready. If the Dominion decided to attack, they'd go down fighting. But the attack never came. Eventually, Zrath's face reappeared on the screen. "Your logs are acceptable. The human station is cleared of wrongdoing. We will continue our search elsewhere." "Commander," Lisa said carefully, "may I ask what you'll do if you find Vela?" "She will be returned to Dominion space to face trial for her crimes." "And if she's found guilty?" Zrath's smile was cold. "Theft of classified information carries only one sentence: death." The channel closed. The 4 Dominion ships turned away from Horizon Point and accelerated, their faster-than-light drives engaging in a flash of distorted space. And then they were gone, leaving the small human station alone in the dark. Lisa let out a breath she'd been holding. Around the command center, crew members slumped in their chairs, the tension draining out of them. Greg looked like he might be sick. Sophie was shaking, but Jake just stared at the empty space where the ships had been, his mind racing. Vela had a 10-day head start, but the Dominion ships were faster. They had better sensors, better tracking technology. They would catch her eventually, and when they did, they would kill her, unless she reached the free systems first. Unless someone warned her that the hunt was getting closer. The days after the Dominion visit felt heavy, like the station itself was holding its breath. Jake threw himself into work, running security drills until the crew complained, checking and rechecking every sensor reading. Lisa let him do it. She understood that everyone processed stress differently, and for Jake, staying busy was better than sitting still with his thoughts. Henry found Jake in the gym on day 3, running on the treadmill with an intensity that suggested he was trying to outrun something more than just physical exhaustion. The doctor waited until Jake slowed down before speaking. "You can't save everyone," Henry said quietly. Jake grabbed a towel, wiping sweat from his face. "I know that. Do you? Because you're tearing yourself apart over someone we barely knew for 3 days. She was a good person, Henry. She didn't deserve what happened to her people. She doesn't deserve to die because some empire decided they wanted what she had." Henry sat down on the bench, looking up at the security officer. "You're right. She doesn't, but we did what we could. We gave her a chance. That's more than most would have done. Is it enough? It has to be." Henry stood up, putting a hand on Jake's shoulder. "Because if we beat ourselves up every time we can't fix everything, we'll break. And then we won't be able to help anyone." The words made sense, but they didn't make Jake feel better. Nothing did. He kept seeing Vela's face in his mind, kept hearing her voice through the translator. She'd been grateful, hopeful, brave despite everything she'd lost, and now she was out there somewhere, being hunted by ships faster and more powerful than anything she could fight. On day 7, Greg came to Jake's office with news. "I've been monitoring the long-range channels," the communications officer said. "The chatter we picked up before? It's moving away from this sector, heading toward the free systems. They're following her trail," Jake said, his jaw tightening. "Looks like it. The Dominion ships are moving fast too, faster than a damaged refugee ship could manage." Greg paused. "Jake, I know what you're thinking. But Lisa's right. We can't risk the station." "I'm not thinking anything," Jake lied. "Thanks for the update," but he was thinking. He was thinking that if he sent a warning on Vela's frequency, it might not be traceable back to Horizon Point. He was thinking that the right thing to do wasn't always the safe thing. He was thinking about all the times in Earth's history when good people had stayed silent because speaking up was dangerous. He didn't send the message. But it wasn't because he thought it was wrong. It was because Lisa was right about one thing. He couldn't risk the 12 lives on this station for one person. No matter how much he wanted to. On day 8, Sophie found a problem with one of the external sensors, something that required a spacewalk to fix. Jake volunteered immediately, grateful for something to do with his hands. Working in the vacuum of space had a way of clearing the mind, forcing a person to focus on the immediate task rather than worrying about things they couldn't control. He was outside the station, magnetic boots keeping him anchored to the hull, when the sensors picked up something. His helmet display lit up with an alert. "Incoming ships. Multiple contacts." And they were coming in fast. Jake's heart jumped. "Command, this is Jake. I'm showing multiple contacts on approach." "Can you confirm?" Lisa's voice came through his helmet speaker. "Confirmed. We see them. 4 ships. No, wait." There was a pause. "Jake, get back inside, now." "What is it?" "Just get inside." "That's an order." Jake abandoned the repair and made his way to the airlock as quickly as he dared. Moving fast in a spacesuit was dangerous, but something in Lisa's voice told him speed mattered more than caution right now. He cycled through the airlock, pulled off his helmet, and ran for the command center. When he burst through the doors, he found the entire command crew staring at the main screen. And what he saw made him stop dead in his tracks. 4 ships were approaching Horizon Point. But they weren't Dominion vessels. They were Therian ships, their organic curves and blue glowing symbols unmistakable even at a distance. And leading them was a ship Jake recognized, its hull still showing the hasty repairs that Sophie had made just 10 days ago. Vela's ship. "They're hailing us," Greg said, his voice filled with wonder, audio and visual. And Jake, she's asking for you specifically. Put her on screen, Lisa said. The screen flickered and there she was. Vela looked different than she had 10 days ago. She was healthier, stronger, and she was wearing formal robes instead of the torn clothing she'd arrived in. But her eyes were the same, that deep amber color that seemed to see right through a person. Commander Bennett, Vela said, her translator converting her melodic language into English. Security Officer Morrison, I have returned. I request permission to dock. Lisa glanced at Jake, then back at the screen. You're welcome to dock, Vela, but I have to ask, is everything all right? Are you being pursued? No, Vela said, and for the first time since Jake had met her, she smiled. Really smiled. I am not fleeing. I'm not alone. I have brought members of my people's council. We come in peace and we come with purpose. What purpose? Lisa asked carefully. To honor a debt, Vela replied, and to offer a gift. The docking procedure took 30 minutes. This time, it wasn't just Vela's small damaged ship limping into the bay. It was a formal delegation, with 3 larger Therian vessels taking up positions around Horizon Point like honor guards. Jake watched the procedure from the command center, his mind racing with questions. When the time came to meet them, Lisa insisted on full diplomatic protocol. That meant formal uniforms, which none of them wore regularly on the research station, and a proper greeting in the main docking bay. Jake felt ridiculous in his dress uniform, but he stood at attention next to Lisa as the airlock opened. Vela emerged first, and behind her came 3 other Therian. They were older than her, their skin showing patterns that might have been the alien equivalent of age lines. They wore robes that shimmered with embedded lights, creating patterns that shifted as they moved. Everything about them screamed importance. Commander Bennett, Vela said formally, allow me to introduce council members Ren, Saiva, and Torik. They are leaders of the Therian remnant, the survivors of our people. Lisa bowed slightly. The way Earth's diplomatic corps had decided was appropriate for first contact situations. You honor us with your presence. Welcome to Horizon Point. The oldest of the 3 Therian, the one Vela had identified as Ren, stepped forward. When he spoke, his translator gave his words a deep, resonant quality. Commander Bennett, Security Officer Morrison, Dr. Walsh, Engineer Cruz, Communications Officer Palmer. We know your names because Vela has spoken of each of you many times in the past days. You saved her life. You asked for nothing in return. This is not common in the galaxy. We just did what anyone should do, Jake said. We helped someone who needed help. No, another council member, Saiva, spoke up. Her voice was gentle but firm. Most species would not. Most would have demanded payment, or they would have turned her over to the Dominion for reward, or they would have ignored her distress signal entirely. Your species is new to the stars, but you have already shown a quality that is rare among old civilizations. What quality is that? Lisa asked. Compassion without expectation, Torik, the 3rd council member, said. You helped because it was right, not because it benefited you. This is the mark of a people worth knowing, worth trusting. Vela stepped forward and Jake saw something in her eyes that made his throat tight. In Therian culture, she said, a life saved creates a debt that must be honored, not because of obligation, but because true kindness deserves to be recognized. You gave me my life back. You gave me the chance to reach my people and warn them about the Dominion's movements. Because of your help, 3 settlements escaped before the Dominion arrived. You saved not just me, but hundreds of my people. Jake felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. We didn't know. You could not have known, Ren said. But this is why your kindness matters even more. You helped without knowing the consequences, without knowing what ripples your actions would create. This is true compassion. Lisa found her voice. We're glad we could help. But you didn't need to come all this way just to thank us. A message would have been enough. A message would not have been enough, Saiva said. The debt must be honored properly. And so we have come with a gift, several gifts in truth. Gifts that we hope will show our gratitude and help your people as you helped ours. They moved the discussion to the station's conference room, the largest space available. Even so, it felt crowded with 3 Therian council members, their attendants and the entire command crew of Horizon Point. The Therian set up a holographic display in the center of the table, and what appeared in the air above it made everyone in the room go silent. It was a star map. Not just any star map, but one showing hyperspace routes that Jake had never seen before. paths through space that cut travel times in half, in some cases by even more. Ancient routes that the Therian had discovered and guarded for generations. This is the first gift, Ren said. Complete navigational data for the old paths. Routes that will allow your ships to travel faster and safer than ever before. Routes that will connect your colonies and outposts in ways you never thought possible. The message from Earth Command arrived exactly 4 hours after the Therian delegation departed. Jake was in his quarters, still holding the memory Crystal Vela had given him, when Lisa's voice came through his comm unit with an edge that made his stomach tighten. "Jake, I need you in the command center. Now." He found the entire crew already assembled when he arrived. On the main screen was Admiral Kevin Torres, commander of Earth's Deep Space Fleet. Torres was a legend in the service, a man who'd built humanity's first real space navy from almost nothing. He was also known for being tough, skeptical, and completely uninterested in excuses. Torres stared out from the screen with eyes that had seen too much combat, his jaw set in what looked like permanent disapproval. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of authority that came from 3 decades of military command. "Commander Bennett, I've reviewed your report on the Therian contact, all 3 versions of it." His tone made it clear what he thought about the fact that there were 3 versions. The initial contact report, the emergency update about the Dominion visit, and now this final report claiming that an alien species has handed us technology that our best scientists say is 50 years ahead of anything we've developed. "It's all accurate, sir," Lisa said, standing straight despite the accusation in his voice. "I don't doubt the facts, Commander. I'm questioning the judgment." Torres leaned forward. "You harbored an alien fugitive without authorization. You provided aid to someone being actively hunted by what appears to be a major galactic power. You risked creating an incident that could have drawn Earth into a war we can't win, and you did all of this on your own authority, without consulting with anyone in the command structure." The room was silent. Jake felt anger building in his chest, but he kept his mouth shut. This wasn't his fight. Not yet. Lisa didn't flinch. "Sir, the situation required immediate action. The Therian's ship was failing. If we'd waited for authorization, she would have died. We made the choice that honored our values and our laws regarding humanitarian aid. Humanitarian aid is one thing, Commander. Playing diplomat with species we know nothing about is something else entirely." Torres's expression didn't soften. "I'm ordering a full investigation, and I'm coming to Horizon Point personally to conduct interviews with everyone involved." "When should we expect you, sir?" Lisa asked. "I'm already en route. My ship will arrive in 36 hours. Torres's eyes shifted, scanning the faces of the crew visible on his screen. They landed on Jake. "Security Officer Morrison, I've read the reports about your role in this situation. I'll want to speak with you first." "Yes, sir," Jake said. The screen went dark. For a moment, no one moved. Then Greg let out a low whistle. "Well, that's not good," he said. "It's exactly what I expected," Lisa replied. "Torres is doing his job. He has to make sure we didn't screw up badly enough to start a war." Sophie spoke up, her voice worried. "What happens if he decides we did screw up?" "Then I take the blame," Lisa said firmly. "I'm the commanding officer. The decision was mine. The rest of you were following orders." "That's not true," Jake said. "I'm the one who argued for letting Vela dock in the first place. I'm the one who spent the most time with her. If anyone shares responsibility, it's me." "No." Lisa's voice was sharp. "I gave the orders. That's the end of it?" "Understood." The crew nodded, but Jake could see the worry on their faces. They all knew that Torres had the power to end careers, to bring charges if he felt the situation warranted it. The next 36 hours were going to be very long. Jake spent the time preparing. He reviewed every log entry, every security recording, every decision point. He wanted to be ready to defend what they'd done, to explain why helping Vela had been the right choice. But the more he reviewed the data, the more he realized how the situation might look to someone who wasn't there. On paper, they'd risked Earth's security for one alien. They'd ignored protocol. They'd made decisions that could have had massive consequences. And yes, it had worked out well, but that didn't mean they'd been right to take the risk. Torres would see all of that. He'd see the danger they'd created, not the good they'd done. When the Admiral's ship arrived, it was a destroyer-class vessel named the Independence. It dwarfed Horizon Point, its weapons and shields representing more firepower than the research station could ever hope to match. The message was clear. Earth was taking this seriously. Torres came aboard with a security detail and 2 officers who Jake assumed were investigators. The Admiral was shorter than Jake expected, but there was something about his presence that made him seem larger. This was a man who'd commanded fleets, who'd made life-and-death decisions for thousands of people. Next to him, Jake felt very small. The interviews were conducted one at a time in the conference room. Torres saw Jake first, as promised. The 2 investigators sat on either side of the Admiral, their tablets recording every word. Jake sat across from them, trying not to feel like he was on trial. "Security Officer Morrison," Torres began, "tell me about the moment you decided to let the alien vessel dock." Jake took a breath. "Sir, the ship was heavily damaged. Sensors showed 1 occupant alive but in distress. If we hadn't let them dock, they would have died. That didn't seem like a choice to me. It seemed like an obligation. An obligation to an unknown alien who could have been dangerous, who could have been carrying biological hazards, who could have been a trap set by hostile forces. All of those things were possible, sir. But so was the simpler explanation. Someone needed help. And you thought it was your place to provide that help without consulting Earth Command. With respect, sir, Earth Command is weeks away by normal communication. The person would have been dead long before we got authorization. Commander Bennett made the call. I supported it. We both knew there would be consequences." Torres studied him for a long moment. "You spent considerable time with the alien. Vela, why?" Jake chose his words carefully. "She was alone, injured, and scared. I felt it was important to make sure she knew she was safe, that we weren't a threat to her. You became emotionally invested. I became aware that she was a person, sir. A person who'd lost her family and her home. That deserves compassion regardless of species. Compassion is a luxury, Morrison, not a military strategy. With respect, sir, I disagree. Compassion is what separates us from species like the Dominion. It's what makes us worth defending." One of the investigators looked up sharply at that, but Torres just nodded slowly. "Tell me about the technology the Therian provided. Did you or Commander Bennett request it in exchange for helping Vela?" "No, sir. We didn't ask for anything. We didn't even know she'd survived until she came back. The technology was a gift, a completely unexpected one. Some might call it payment for services rendered." "Some might," Jake agreed, "but that's not how it felt. It felt like gratitude, like they wanted to show appreciation for something we did without expecting reward." Torres made a note on his tablet. "You understand that this technology changes everything, don't you? The roots alone will revolutionize human space travel. The weapons technology could give us an edge in conflicts we don't even know are coming. This isn't just about one refugee. This is about Earth's entire strategic position." "I understand that now, sir, but I didn't when I argued for helping her. None of us did." "Would it have changed your decision if you'd known?" Jake thought about it. Really thought about it. "No, sir. I don't think it would have. Helping someone because they can pay you back isn't really helping. It's just a transaction." The interview went on for another hour. Torres asked about every decision, every moment, every conversation Jake had with Vela. The investigators took notes, occasionally asking their own questions. By the end, Jake felt wrung out, exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical exertion. The others were interviewed over the next several hours. Lisa was in the conference room for nearly 2 hours. Sophie and Henry each had their turn. Greg was called in after dinner. Through it all, Torres remained professional but impossible to read. He gave no indication of what he was thinking, what conclusions he was drawing. That night, Jake couldn't sleep. He kept running through the interview in his mind, wondering what he should have said differently, what Torres was going to put in his report. The crystal Vela had given him sat on his desk, glowing softly. He picked it up, remembering what she'd said. It was a memory stone. She'd recorded the moment he told her to stay safe. On impulse, he pressed his thumb to the crystal's surface. Light flowed from it, coalescing into a holographic image above his palm. And there he was, seeing himself through Vela's eyes. He was standing in the docking bay, dressed in his work uniform. His face showed concern, but also something else. Kindness, genuine care. When his holographic self spoke, saying, "Stay safe out there," the emotion in his voice was clear. He'd meant it. He'd truly cared about what happened to her. Watching it from her perspective, Jake understood why she'd come back. In that moment, captured forever in the crystal, he'd shown her that humans could be trusted. that there were species in the galaxy who helped because it was right, not because it was profitable. He was still holding the crystal when someone knocked on his door. It was Torres, alone this time without his investigators. 6 months passed before Jake truly understood what Torres had meant about things changing. The Admiral's report had reached Earth Command, and within weeks Horizon Point went from being an obscure research station to the most famous human outpost beyond the solar system. The crew became celebrities overnight, their faces broadcast across every human colony. Jake hated it. He'd never wanted attention. He'd just wanted to do his job and do it well. But now he couldn't walk into any human settlement without being recognized. People wanted autographs, wanted to hear the story firsthand, wanted to shake the hand of the man who'd made first contact with the Therian. "You're a symbol," Lisa told him one evening as they shared dinner in the station's small cafeteria. She'd been called back to Earth twice for debriefings and had returned both times looking exhausted. "Earth needs symbols right now. We're still figuring out who we are in this galaxy. You showed everyone what we can be at our best." "I just let someone dock," Jake said for what felt like the 1,000th time. "You did more than that, and you know it." Lisa took a sip of her coffee. "But I understand. The attention is difficult. It won't last forever, though. Eventually there will be other stories, other heroes. We just have to wait it out." But the attention wasn't the hardest part. The hardest part was the question everyone asked, the one Jake couldn't answer satisfactorily no matter how many times he tried. Would you do it again? Would you risk everything for one person? The answer was yes. He knew that in his bones, but explaining why was nearly impossible. How did you explain that some things mattered more than safety? That there were moments when doing the right thing was more important than doing the smart thing? The Therian technology was being studied at research facilities across Earth's colonies. Sophie had been recruited to one of the top labs, offered a salary that made her research station pay look like pocket change. She'd turned it down. "I like it here," she'd told Jake. "Out here we're doing real work, not just studying other people's discoveries." Henry had started receiving communication from Therian medical experts. They'd established an exchange program, sharing knowledge about biology and treatment methods. Some of the techniques the Therian used were revolutionizing human medicine. Henry spent hours each day in video conferences, learning from aliens who'd been practicing medicine for generations. Greg had implemented the new communication technology, and the results were staggering. Messages that used to take days now arrived in hours. Real-time conversations with Earth were possible for the first time. The isolation that had defined life on distant stations was ending. For Jake, the changes were more subtle. Earth Command had indeed wanted him for training programs, but Torres had run interference, arguing that Jake was more valuable doing actual work than talking about work he'd already done. As a compromise, Jake recorded detailed training modules that could be used throughout the fleet. It was tedious work, but at least he could do it from Horizon Point. The memory crystal sat on his desk, a constant reminder of why he'd made the choices he had. He activated it sometimes, watching himself through Vela's eyes, remembering that moment of connection between species. She'd seen something in him that he hadn't seen in himself, something worth celebrating. He wondered about her sometimes, wondered where she was, whether she was safe, whether she ever thought about the human security officer who'd given her a chance. The galaxy was vast and the odds of seeing her again were almost zero. But he hoped she was well. He hoped her people had found safety. Then, on a quiet Tuesday morning 7 months after the Therian delegation had visited, Greg burst into the command center with news that made everyone stop what they were doing. "We're getting a transmission," he said, his voice excited. "Multiple sources all across human space. It's an announcement. A big one." "What kind of announcement?" Lisa asked. "It's from the Therian Council. They're forming an alliance, a mutual defense pact between the Therian remnant and 3 other species who've been threatened by the Dominion." Greg pulled up the transmission on the main screen. "And they're inviting humanity to join." The room went silent. On the screen was a formal document, written in multiple languages including English. The terms were clear. Species who joined the alliance would commit to mutual defense, to sharing technology and resources, to standing together against aggressive empires like the Dominion. It was exactly the kind of formal diplomatic relationship that Earth had been trying to establish for years. "This is because of us," Sophie whispered. "Because of what we did?" "This is because of what you did," came a familiar voice from the doorway. Everyone turned. Vela stood there, dressed in formal robes similar to what she'd worn during her last visit. But she wasn't alone. Behind her were two other aliens, species Jake had never seen before. One was tall and crystalline, its body seeming to be made of living glass. The other was smaller, covered in soft fur with large eyes that reflected the light. "Vela," Jake said, standing up quickly. "You're here." "I am part of the diplomatic mission," she explained, entering the command center with her companions. "The Alliance wants to meet with Earth's representatives. We are traveling to Earth now. But I asked to stop here first." "To see you all again," Lisa stepped forward. "It's good to see you. You're looking well." "I am well, thanks to you." Vela gestured to her companions. "These are my colleagues, Ambassador Kiln of the Crystalline Collective and Ambassador Mira of the Furrow People. We three represent the species who have joined together, the crystalline being made to sound like wind chimes, which a translator device converted to words. We have heard the story of Horizon Point many times, how humans chose kindness over safety. It inspired our people to take similar risks in forming this alliance." The furry alien Mira spoke in a high, clear voice. "The Therian vouched for humanity's character, said you could be trusted. That is rare praise in these times." "We just helped someone who needed help," Jake said, aware that he was repeating the same line he'd said 100 times before. "You did more than that," Vela said gently. "You showed the galaxy that not every species is driven by greed or fear. You proved that cooperation is possible, that trust can exist between different peoples." She moved closer to Jake. "You changed things, Jake Morrison. All of you did. The Alliance exists because you made one refugee feel safe enough to reach her people. Those ripples spread farther than you can imagine." Over the next few hours, the diplomatic mission explained the details of the proposed alliance. It wasn't just about military defense, though that was part of it. It was about trade, about cultural exchange, about building connections between species who wanted something better than the endless conflicts that plagued the galaxy. "The Dominion is powerful," Ambassador Kiln said, its crystalline body chiming softly with each word. "But they are not unstoppable. Together we are stronger. Together we can create zones of peace where species can grow without fear." "What does the Alliance need from humanity?" Lisa asked. "Partnership," Mira answered. "Your technology is still developing, yes. But you have something more valuable. You have shown the ability to make moral choices even when they are difficult. That quality is needed in leaders, in allies." The mission stayed at Horizon Point for 2 days before continuing to Earth. In that time, Jake spent hours talking with Vela, catching up on the months since they'd last seen each other. She told him about the settlements her people had established, hidden in systems the Dominion hadn't yet explored. She told him about the Alliance forming, about species finding courage to stand together against aggression. "It's not perfect," she admitted. "We still have conflicts within the Alliance. Different species have different values, different goals. But we talk about our differences instead of fighting over them. That's progress." On the evening before the mission departed, Jake and Vela stood together in the observation lounge, just as they had months before. The stars looked the same, but everything else had changed. "I have something for you," Vela said. She pulled out another crystal smaller than the first. "This is not a memory stone. This is a communication crystal. Therian technology. If you ever need to reach me, hold it and speak my name. I will hear you, no matter where I am in the galaxy." Jake took it carefully. "Why would you give me this?" "Because you are my friend," Vela said simply. "Because in a galaxy that often feels cold and hostile, you showed me warmth. I do not forget that. I will never forget that." "I'm glad we met," Jake said. "Even if it complicated everything," Vela smiled. "The best things often do. Safe travels, Jake Morrison, until we meet again." "Stay safe out there," Jake replied, the same words he'd spoken the first time she left. "I will, and so will you." The diplomatic mission left the next morning. Jake watched from the command center as their ships accelerated away, heading for Earth and the negotiations that would determine humanity's place in the Alliance. Lisa stood beside him, quiet and thoughtful. "This is really happening," she said finally. "Humanity is joining something bigger than ourselves. Are you worried?" Jake asked. "I'm terrified," Lisa admitted, "but also excited. We're not alone anymore. For the first time since we left Earth, we have allies. Real allies, not just trade partners or temporary agreements. That changes everything." The first test of the Alliance came sooner than anyone expected. Just 8 months after humanity officially joined, a Dominion fleet appeared at the border of Furrow space, the territory controlled by Ambassador Mira's people. The fleet numbered 20 warships, more than enough to overwhelm the Furrow's modest defenses. The message they broadcast was simple and brutal: submit to Dominion authority or be destroyed. Jake was off duty when the alert came through. He'd been in the gym, trying to work off the stress of another long day managing increased traffic through Horizon Point. Lisa's voice over the station intercom brought him running to the command center, still wearing his workout clothes. "What's happening?" he asked, grabbing a towel to wipe sweat from his face. Greg looked up from his console, his expression grim. "The Dominion is making a move. They've blockaded the Furrow homeworld. The Alliance Council is convening an emergency session right now. We're patched into the feed." The main screen showed the council chamber, a virtual space where representatives from all Alliance species could meet regardless of distance. Vela was there, her face tight with worry. So were Ambassador Kiln and Ambassador Mira, though Mira looked terrified, her fur standing on end. "They came without warning," Mira was saying, her voice shaking. "Our defense fleet is no match for their numbers. We have perhaps 3 days before they begin orbital bombardment. My people, they are evacuating the cities, but there is nowhere to go. Our world is all we have." The human representative was Admiral Torres. He'd been appointed to the Alliance Council after the treaty was signed. His military experience deemed crucial for situations exactly like this. Now he spoke with the calm authority that had made him legendary in Earth's fleet. "The Alliance treaty is clear," Torres said. "An attack on one member is an attack on all. The Dominion knows this. They're testing us, testing whether we'll actually honor our commitments." "We must respond," Ambassador Kiln said, its crystalline body pulsing with agitated light. "If we fail to protect the Furrow, the Alliance means nothing. Other species will see us as weak. The Dominion will grow bolder." "Agreed," Vela said. "The Therian are preparing our ships now. We can have a fleet at the Furrow homeworld within 2 days. Earth's nearest battle group is 3 days away," Torres said, "but I'm authorizing them to move at maximum speed. They'll arrive exhausted and low on fuel, but they'll arrive. We made a promise. We keep our promises." The council debated for another hour, coordinating fleet movements and evacuation plans. Jake watched it all, feeling helpless. This was exactly what people had warned about when Earth joined the Alliance. They'd said it would drag humanity into conflicts that weren't their business, wars that they couldn't win. Now that moment had arrived. But as Jake watched Mira's terrified face, watched her plead for help for her people, he knew there was no other choice. The Alliance had to respond. If they didn't, everything they'd built meant nothing. Lisa appeared beside him, her arms crossed. "This is what we signed up for," she said quietly. "I know. Doesn't make it easier." "No, it doesn't." The battle group that Torres had dispatched consisted of 6 human warships led by the cruiser Defiance. Its captain was a woman named Rebecca Cole, a veteran who'd seen action in the border skirmishes with pirates that plagued human space. She'd never faced anything like a Dominion fleet, but she was about to. The Therian fleet arrived first, 12 ships of various sizes. Their technology was superior to both human and Dominion vessels, but they were still outnumbered. The Crystalline Collective sent 8 ships, their hulls literally made of living crystal that could absorb and redirect energy weapons. Together with the Furrow's own small defense fleet, the Alliance had maybe 30 ships total. Against the Dominion's 20, it should have been enough. But intelligence reports suggested the Dominion ships were heavily armed, crewed by experienced warriors who'd conquered dozens of worlds. This wasn't going to be an easy fight. Horizon Point became a relay station for information flowing between Earth and the battle zone. Greg worked around the clock monitoring transmissions, passing updates to Lisa, who forwarded them to Earth Command. Jake found himself largely useless in the situation, relegated to maintaining station security while the real action happened light years away. The tension was unbearable. Everyone on the station felt it. Scientists who normally focused on their research couldn't concentrate. Engineers checked and rechecked systems that didn't need checking. Henry prepared the medical bay for casualties, though they all knew that if ships came to Horizon Point damaged, the battle had already been lost. On the second day, the human battle group arrived at the Furrow homeworld. Captain Cole's first transmission back to Earth Command was brief and professional. We're in position, beginning coordination with Alliance forces. The Dominion has noticed our arrival. They're adjusting their formation. Then came the waiting, hours of silence while ships maneuvered and commanders planned. Jake spent most of that time in the observation lounge, staring at stars that seemed impossibly distant from the life and death struggle happening somewhere out there. Sophie found him there in the evening. She sat down beside him without speaking, and they watched the stars together. "You're thinking this is your fault," she said finally. "If we hadn't helped Vela, none of this would be happening. Earth wouldn't be in the Alliance. Our ships wouldn't be about to fight a war. Our ships would still be alone," Sophie countered, "facing a galaxy full of threats with no allies. No friends. Just humans against everything else. Is that better? People might die tomorrow because of choices we made. People might live because of those same choices. The Furrow people would definitely die if the Alliance didn't respond. Earth's battle group might be what tips the balance. Our presence might prevent bloodshed just by showing the Dominion that we're serious." Jake wanted to believe that. He really did. The battle began on the third day. The initial reports were chaotic, fragmentary. Ships engaging at extreme range, energy weapons and missiles creating a deadly dance across space. The Dominion fleet was aggressive, trying to break through the Alliance lines to reach the Furrow homeworld. The Alliance forces held firm, using their superior coordination to counter the Dominion's raw power. Captain Cole's voice came through in updates every few minutes. 2 Dominion ships damaged. They're falling back. Alliance forces pressing the advantage. Then minutes later, Dominion has reinforcements. 5 more ships just jumped in. This is not going well. The tide of battle shifted rapidly. What had been a fairly even fight suddenly became a desperate struggle for survival. The Dominion reinforcements were fresh, their weapons charged, their crews ready. They hit the Alliance fleet like a hammer. Human ship Defiance taking fire, shields at 40%. Returning fire, but were outnumbered. Tharian vessel Crystal Dawn is damaged. Life support compromised. They're withdrawing from the line. Furrow defense platform destroyed. The Dominion is targeting the planet's orbital infrastructure. Each update was worse than the last. Jake listened with growing horror as the battle turned against the Alliance. Ships were dying out there. People were dying. And there was nothing he could do but listen and hope. Then Vela's voice came through on a direct channel to Horizon Point. "Jake Morrison. I need to speak with you, privately." Lisa nodded permission and Jake took the call in a side office. Vela's face appeared on the screen and she looked exhausted. Behind her, alarms were sounding. "We're losing," she said without preamble. "The Dominion brought more ships than we expected. We can hold them off for maybe another hour, but then they'll break through. They'll bombard the Furrow homeworld. Millions will die. What can I do?" Jake asked helplessly. "There's something I haven't told anyone. A Tharian secret." Vela took a breath. "The ancient routes we gave you. There's one route we didn't include in the data. A path that leads directly to the Dominion capital world. It cuts through unstable space that most ships can't navigate safely. But human ships with your shield modifications might be able to use it." Jake's mind raced. "You want us to threaten their homeworld? Force them to withdraw their fleet? It's the only way. But it's dangerous. The route is barely charted. Ships that have tried to use it often don't return. And even if a ship makes it through, threatening the Dominion capital is an act of war that can't be taken back. If we don't, the Furrow people die." "Yes." Jake thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. "Send me the route data. I'll get it to Admiral Torres." "Jake, this isn't your decision to make. I'm calling you because I trust you, because I know you'll understand what this means. I understand that people need help. Send the data." Vela nodded slowly. "Transmitted. The route coordinates are on your system now. Use them wisely, my friend." The call ended. Jake stood there for a moment, staring at the blank screen, then went to find Lisa. She was in the command center monitoring the battle reports. He pulled her aside and explained what Vela had sent. Lisa's eyes widened. "This is insane. Threatening the Dominion homeworld could start a war that never ends. The war has already started. They brought it to the Furrow. We're just responding. By threatening civilians? Jake, this crosses a line. So does bombing a planet full of people who just want to be left alone." 2 years after the battle at Furrow Space, Jake Morrison stood in front of a room full of young officers at the Earth Defense Academy. This was his least favorite part of the job they'd given him, teaching people who thought they already knew everything about first contact situations. But Admiral Torres had insisted, and Jake had learned you didn't say no to Torres. The question everyone asks is whether we made the right choice, Jake said to the class of 50 eager faces. Whether helping one alien refugee was worth everything that came after. The alliance, the battles, the complications, and I'll tell you what I tell everyone who asks. The right choice isn't always the safe choice. Sometimes it's just the human choice. A hand went up in the back, a young woman with sharp eyes and a skeptical expression. But sir, Earth Command protocols specifically say we should avoid involvement in alien conflicts. You violated those protocols. How is that the right choice? Jake smiled. He got this question every time. Protocols are important. They're written by smart people who want to keep us safe. But protocols can't account for every situation. When I saw Vela's ship dying in space, the protocol said to wait for authorization, but waiting meant she would die. So I had to choose between following rules and doing what I knew was right. But what if it had gone wrong? Another student asked. What if she'd been dangerous? What if helping her had started a war instead of preventing one? Then I would have lived with that consequence, Jake said honestly. But here's the thing. We can't make decisions based on worst-case scenarios alone. If we're too afraid to take any risks, we never accomplish anything. We never make real connections. We just hide and hope nobody notices us. The class continued for another hour. Jake talked about the technical aspects of first contact, the importance of cultural sensitivity, the protocols that actually mattered, but he always came back to the central point. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't technology or weapons. It was the capacity for compassion. After class, he walked through the academy grounds, enjoying the rare sunshine. Earth's weather was more pleasant than the recycled air of Horizon Point, but Jake missed the station. He'd been assigned to the academy for a 2-year rotation, sharing his experience with the next generation of officers. It was important work, but it felt distant from the real action. His communicator buzzed. A message from Lisa, still commanding Horizon Point. The station had been expanded significantly, now housing 50 personnel and serving as a major hub for Alliance traffic. Lisa sent regular updates, keeping Jake connected to the place that had become more home than Earth ever was. The message was brief. Conference call in 1 hour. Alliance Council wants to discuss something with you directly. Be ready. Jake found a quiet office and logged into the secure network at the appointed time. The screen filled with familiar faces. Admiral Torres representing Earth. Vela, now a senior member of the Therian Council. Ambassador Kiln and Ambassador Mira. And several newer members from species that had joined the Alliance in the past 2 years. Jake Morrison, Torres began. Thank you for joining us. We have a proposition for you, sir. Vela spoke next, her translator rendering her melodic language into English. The Alliance has grown significantly. We now have 7 member species and more requesting to join. This creates challenges. We need someone to coordinate between species, to serve as a liaison who understands the values that hold us together. We want you to be the Alliance's first diplomatic coordinator, Torres said. You'd work directly with the Council, traveling between member worlds, helping solve problems before they become conflicts. It's a new position. We're creating it specifically for you. Jake was speechless. I'm a security officer, not a diplomat. You're the person who started all of this, Ambassador Kiln said, its crystalline form glowing softly. You understand what the Alliance means. You've shown the judgment to make difficult choices, and every member species trusts you. I don't know if I'm qualified for this, Jake said honestly. Neither did we when we formed the Alliance, Ambassador Mira replied. We learned. You will too, and you won't be alone. We'll support you, teach you, guide you. Jake looked at their faces on the screen, these beings from different worlds, different cultures, all looking at him with hope and confidence. It was overwhelming. Can I have time to think about it? He asked. Of course, Torres said. Take a week. But Jake, I think you know what your answer will be. After the call ended, Jake sat in the quiet office for a long time. This was a huge decision. If he accepted, it would mean leaving Earth's military formally, dedicating himself fully to the Alliance. No more going back to a simple security position. No more quiet days on a research station. But it also meant being part of something larger than himself. Something important. He spent the next few days talking to people he trusted. Henry, who'd left Horizon Point to work at a joint human-Therian medical research facility, told him to follow his heart. Sophie, now heading up the engineering team that was implementing Therian shield technology across Earth's fleet, told him he'd be crazy to turn it down. Greg, still at Horizon Point managing the communication systems, just laughed and said he'd known this was coming for months. On the 5th day, Jake made his decision. He contacted Torres and accepted the position. The transition happened quickly. Within a month, Jake was no longer an officer in Earth's defense forces. He was a civilian diplomat working for an interstellar alliance. They gave him a ship, a small but well-equipped vessel called the Pathfinder, with a crew of 6 representing 3 different species. His first assignment was to visit a species called the Varden, who were considering joining the alliance but had concerns about the mutual defense obligations. The work was harder than Jake expected. Every species had its own culture, its own values, its own way of seeing the galaxy. Finding common ground wasn't always easy. Sometimes it seemed impossible. But Jake discovered he had a talent for listening, for understanding what people really needed beneath what they were asking for. He traveled constantly, from world to world, solving problems and building connections. Sometimes it was big issues like negotiating trade agreements or resolving territorial disputes. Sometimes it was small things, like helping a newly arrived alien diplomat understand human customs or explaining to a human colony why their Therian neighbors found certain behaviors offensive. Through it all, Jake stayed in touch with Vela. She'd become his closest friend, someone he could talk to about the challenges of bridging different worlds. They met in person every few months when their travels brought them to the same location, and they talked via communication crystal almost weekly. 3 years into his new role, Jake found himself back at Horizon Point for a formal ceremony. The Alliance was dedicating a monument at the station, commemorating the place where human-alien cooperation had first begun. Representatives from all member species were there, along with hundreds of human dignitaries. Lisa met him at the docking bay, older now but still sharp-eyed and capable. "Welcome home," she said, hugging him. "It's good to be back." Jake looked around at the expanded station. "You've done amazing things here. We all did. You most of all." The ceremony was held in a new wing of the station built specifically for diplomatic functions. The monument was beautiful, a sculpture that incorporated elements from each member species. At its base was a plaque with a simple inscription in 7 languages. Here one person chose compassion over caution. That choice changed the galaxy. Jake stood in front of it reading the words, feeling the weight of everything that had happened. So much had changed since that day when he'd argued for letting an unknown alien dock. Humanity had allies now, friends, partners in building something better than the endless conflicts that had defined the galaxy for generations. But there had been costs too. 3 more battles with the Dominion, ships lost, lives lost. The price of standing up for what was right. After the ceremony, there was a reception. Jake found himself surrounded by people wanting to thank him, to shake his hand, to hear the story one more time. He smiled and answered questions, but he felt distant from it all. These people saw him as a hero, as someone who'd changed history, but he'd just been a security officer who made a choice. Vela found him on the observation deck later, escaping the crowd. She stood beside him in comfortable silence, looking out at the stars. "Do you ever regret it?" Jake asked. "Coming to us for help? Everything that happened because of it?" "Never," Vela said firmly. "My people are alive because of you. The Alliance exists because of you. Yes, there have been struggles. There will be more. But the galaxy is better now than it was. Species work together instead of living in fear. That's worth any cost. Even the lives lost in the battles, those who died chose to fight for something they believed in. They chose to protect others. There is honor in that choice." Vela looked at him. "You carry too much weight, Jake Morrison. You think every consequence is your responsibility. But you didn't force anyone to do anything. You just showed them that another way was possible." Jake thought about that. Maybe she was right. Maybe he'd been taking on guilt that wasn't his to carry. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for everything. For trusting us, for coming back with that gift, for being my friend."